My name is Heather Ivins. I'm 32 years old. And I found out exactly what my father thought of me the night he raised a glass to 200 people and called me the freeloader with no future. The retirement party had gold balloons and a live band. My father stood at the microphone, 35 years of success behind him, and pointed at me across the room. No degree, no career, no future, he said. Some children build. Some just take. People laughed. My stepmother smiled into her champagne. I didn't cry. I set down my glass and I smiled back because I knew something none of them did. The consulting firm my father had been praising all night, the mysterious company that saved his business 3 years running, the genius he could never put a face to. That genius was me. And by the time his coffee got cold the next morning, one email from me would end everything he'd just spent the night celebrating. The house on Winthrop Lane had a kitchen island where my mother used to let me stand on a stool and stir batter. I remember her hands over mine, the smell of vanilla, her voice low and certain. You're going to college, Heather. Someplace with ivy on the walls. I'm already saving for it. She died 11 months later. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed in March, gone by February. I was 8. I kept the stool in the garage for years after, until it wasn't there anymore and nobody told me where it went. Linda moved in when I was 9. She brought throw pillows in shades of cream and a 5-year-old named Marcus who cried if you looked at him wrong. My father married her 14 months after the funeral, in a courthouse, no guests. I found out about the wedding when Linda handed me a plate at dinner and said, "You can call me Mom if you want, sweetheart, but you don't have to." I never did. She never asked twice. By the time I was 12, dinner had quietly split into 2 versions. Linda cooked for herself, Marcus, and my father, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the good plates. I ate cereal at the counter, or whatever was left in the pan, standing up because there were only 4 chairs at the table, and somehow I was always the one who'd already eaten. Nobody said it out loud. Nobody had to. I learned to read a room the way other kids learn times tables. Fast, silent, useful. There's a photo from my 16th birthday, the one on the mantel in a silver frame. My father, Linda, Marcus, a birthday cake with too many candles. I'm not in it. I was the one holding the camera. I told myself that for years, that I chose to take the picture, until I found the negatives one summer, cleaning out a closet and saw there were 4 other shots. In every one, I'm standing at the edge of the frame, half cropped out, like someone kept nudging the camera left. I want to be clear about something. I was not a difficult child. I got A's. I did the dishes without being asked. I never once threw a tantrum in that house because I understood, even at 10, even at 14, that tantrums were a currency I didn't have the credit for. Marcus could scream about a video game and get a new one by Friday. I could bring home a report card with 5 A's and a single B in trigonometry, and my father would look at the B. The year I turned 20, I was a sophomore at UConn, declared in supply chain management, on the dean's list both semesters. I came home for spring break with a duffel bag and a laptop covered in stickers, and my father was waiting for me at the kitchen table with a folder. Not angry, calm, which was worse. The fluorescent light over the table buzzed faintly, the way it always did right before it needed a new bulb. "We need to talk about money," he said. "Okay," I said, setting my bag down slowly. "What about it?" "Marcus got into the Hartwick MBA program. It's $42,000 a year. We don't have the money to send you both." "I have scholarships," I said. "My gap is small, $4,000 a year. I already found a work-study job in the registrar's office. I don't need much from you." He shook his head, the way you shake your head at someone who hasn't understood the assignment. "The family doesn't have the money, Heather. I need you to withdraw for now. Marcus needs this more." "For now," I said. "What does that mean exactly?" He didn't answer that. What he said instead was that Marcus had real potential in business, that I could always go back, that this was temporary. I believed him for about 6 months, the way you believe a doctor who tells you the test results will probably be fine. I didn't know yet that there had been money, that my mother had set some aside for exactly this. I only knew what he told me, which was that there wasn't enough, and that I was the one who'd have to wait. I withdrew that April. I moved my things out of my dorm into a room at home that Linda had already started using for storage. My desk had a box of Marcus's old snowboarding gear sitting on it when I got there. I took a job at a temp agency answering phones. I told myself it was temporary too. It took 2 years for temporary to become permanent, in the quiet, grinding way these things do. 1 semester deferred becomes 2, becomes a full-time job I couldn't leave without losing the health insurance, becomes Marcus starting his MBA in the fall while I sat at the dinner table, uninvited, watching my father ask him about his coursework with a kind of hunger I never once saw pointed at me. The night I finally left, I was 22. I'd saved $2,000 in a checking account I'd opened without telling anyone, and I'd found a share in an apartment in Hartford with a woman named Priya I'd met at the temp agency. I packed 1 suitcase. My father found me zipping it in the hallway and asked, not unkindly, where I thought I was going. To build something of my own, I told him.
He almost laughed.
Not cruelly. That was the strange part. He looked almost fond, the way you'd look at a child who'd announced she wanted to be an astronaut. Heather, he said, you've always been good at being disappointed. Try not to be too surprised when it happens again. I didn't answer him. I zipped the suitcase the rest of the way, and I left through the front door instead of the garage because I wanted, just once, to leave through the door guests used. The bus to Hartford left at 6:40 that evening. I sat by the window with the suitcase between my knees and watched the exit signs for the town I'd grown up in slide past. Route 9, the Stop and Shop, the exit for Winthrop Lane, where a stool that used to be in a garage no longer was. I did not cry. I pressed my palm flat against the cold glass and made myself a promise, quiet enough that even I almost didn't hear it. I would never again ask that family for a single thing. Not money, not a chair at the table, not a place in a photograph. I had no idea, that night on the bus with $2,000 and a duffel bag, that 10 years later my father's entire company would be standing on ground I owned, and that he still wouldn't know my name when he was thanking me for it. The office where I tempied in Hartford had a window that didn't close all the way. In February, the cold came through the seam like a blade, and I kept a space heater under my desk that I paid for myself, because the facility's budget didn't cover comfort for administrative assistants. I answered phones for a logistics brokerage called Penrose Freight Solutions. $8 above minimum wage. I filed bills of lading during the day and read supply chain textbooks at night. The ones I bought used for $6 each from a bookstore on Asylum Street that smelled like other people's coffee. I was 24. I had $411 in savings and a library card I used more than my debit card. You're doing homework again, Priya said one night, catching me at my desk after the office had emptied. She ran the front desk 2 chairs down from mine. For what class? No class, I said. Just reading. She looked at the spreadsheet on my screen, rows of shipping delays I'd pulled from Penrose's own records, color-coded by cause. That's not reading. That's work nobody's paying you for. She wasn't wrong. I'd noticed a pattern by then, one that kept me up later than I should have stayed up. Trucks left half-loaded because dispatch never cross-referenced delivery windows against warehouse pickup times. It wasn't a mystery. It was arithmetic. On my own time, at my own kitchen table, I built a model that matched pickup slots to delivery zones and cut dead mileage almost in half. I showed it to my supervisor. He flipped through 3 pages, said it was interesting, and never opened the file again. So, I found somebody who would. His name was Tom Ferris, and he ran a 9-truck distribution outfit in Springfield. I called him from the parking lot on my lunch break, my hands cold around the phone. I don't know you, he said. No, I said. But I can show you $11,000 a month you're losing on empty return trips. If I'm wrong, you don't pay me anything. There was a pause. A forklift beeped somewhere behind him. And, if you're right, $400, and you tell one other person about me. He paid me $1,200 by the 3rd month because I was right by a wider margin than either of us expected. I registered Meridian Consulting LLC 11 weeks later, filed through a service I found online, using an address that belonged to a UPS store on Farmington Avenue. I didn't put my name on anything past the filing itself. I knew what would happen if a client Googled Heather Ivins and found Richard Ivins 3 links down, CEO of Ivins Distribution, profiled in the Hartford Business Journal for a 12-year retrospective on regional shipping consolidation. I knew exactly the shape of the assumption that would follow. Rode in on Daddy's Rolodex. Got the meeting because of the last name, not the model. I had built the routing algorithm myself, alone, on a laptop with a cracked corner, and I was not going to hand anyone a reason to credit it to a man who told me the family couldn't afford my tuition the same year he wrote a check for Marcus's first MBA semester. I wanted the work to stand on its own feet. Nothing else. That meant I needed a face. I met Dana Okafor at a logistics meetup in a Hartford hotel conference room, the kind with bad coffee and a projector that kept dimming. She'd spent 9 years managing operations for a mid-sized freight company and had just been laid off in a restructuring, sharp and furious about it in a way I recognized immediately because I'd worn that furious calm myself. I need someone to be the person clients talk to, I told her over drinks 2 weeks later, in a booth at a bar near Bushnell Park. I do the analysis. You do the room. Why? She asked. Not suspicious. Just direct. Because I don't want to explain my last name to anyone, I said. That's all you get for now. If that's a problem, I understand. She turned her glass a half-turn on the table, thinking. I don't care about your last name. I care about getting paid, and not getting lied to. Then we're fine. We built the wall carefully after that. Contracts went out under Meridian Consulting LLC, signed by Dana as Director of Operations. Client calls, site visits, contract negotiations, Dana, always Dana, briefed by me the night before on everything from margin targets to the specific words to use if a client pushed back. I stayed backstage, building models at a kitchen table in an apartment in Windsor with water stains on the ceiling I never got the landlord to fix. Nobody outside of Dana, and my accountant knew I owned the company outright. Nobody needed to. You know, eventually somebody's going to ask why the owner never shows up to her own meetings, Dana said once, maybe a year in, only half joking. Then you tell them I hate rooms, I said. It's not even a lie. It worked better than I expected. Clients trusted Dana's steadiness, and they trusted the numbers I gave her to say, and none of them ever asked who was behind the curtain because the results didn't leave room for the question. 3 years in, Meridian had 11 clients across Connecticut and Western Massachusetts, and I finally stopped checking my bank balance every morning like it might have reverted overnight to $411. It was a Tuesday in March when Dana walked into the office we'd finally rented, a narrow suite above a dry cleaner's on Pearl Street, and set her bag down without taking her coat off. We just got a request for a major engagement, she said, from Ivan's Distribution. She said it like any other line item because to her it was. My father's company, I said. Dana didn't flinch. She'd been in this business long enough to know that names on paper don't always tell you what they mean. You want me to decline it? I can decline it. There's a queue of clients waiting, Heather. We don't need this one. I looked at the request again. Ivan's Distribution. 41 trucks, 3 warehouses, a routing system that hadn't been touched since 2011. Revenue down 18% year over year. I knew all of this before I opened the file, because I'd watched the company from a distance for a decade, the way you watch a house you used to live in. It's the biggest contract we've ever been offered, I said. That's not what I asked. I closed the laptop. Rain came down on the window of my Pearl Street office, thin lines catching the streetlight. I'm not doing it for him, I said. I'm doing it because if we turn down a client this size over a last name, we're not a company. We're a grudge with a logo. Dana studied me for a second longer than she needed to. Then she nodded once, the way she did when she decided not to argue. I'll draft the engagement letter. He'll never know who signed off on it. He never did. For 3 years, I ran his company from 40 minutes and a lifetime of family history away. Dana sat across the table from him in conference rooms in Stamford. I sat in Boston reading transcripts. The first 8 months were the hardest. Their warehouse in Bridgeport was bleeding money through a scheduling system built for half the volume it now carried. I rebuilt it from the ground up, sent the specs to Dana at 11 at night, watched her present them as her own analysis the next morning. By month 10, on-time delivery was up 63%. By month 18, they'd added 2 new regional contracts. By month 30, Ivan's distribution was posting numbers Richard hadn't seen in years. I told myself I was proud of the work, not the man it was saving. Dana started sending me the call recordings without being asked, a habit that began the week Richard first mentioned Meridian by name in a leadership meeting. I listened to them on my commute, earbuds in, staring at the Charles River going by gray and flat. "Whoever's running point on our account," Richard said, on a recording dated that March, "is the smartest operator I've dealt with in 30 years. I don't even know his name, and I'd hire him tomorrow if I could." Dana's voice, careful. "It's actually a woman-led team, Richard." A pause. Then his laugh, the one I used to hear through the wall of my childhood bedroom when he was pleased with himself. "Even better. Wish my own daughter had half that head for numbers. Waste of a good brain, that one. Never applied herself to anything." I sat with my thumb over the pause button for 11 seconds. I know because I looked at the timestamp afterward. Then I let it keep playing because turning it off felt like giving him the last word, and I let it run all the way to the end of the meeting, through the sign-off, through the click of someone's mug being set down on a table 200 miles away. I didn't cry. I made a note in the margin of my legal pad, "The genius no one sees," and underlined it once, like a specimen I was pinning down for later. Dana called that night. "You listened to that one?" "I listened to all of them." "You don't have to keep doing this to yourself, Heather. I can filter these out. Send you the operational stuff, cut the parts where he talks about you." "Don't cut anything," I said. "I want to know exactly what he thinks he's safe saying." "That's not healthy. That's a woman collecting bruises, so she can count them later." I didn't answer that because she wasn't wrong, and because I didn't yet know what I was building toward, only that I wasn't ready to stop. The email came on a Tuesday in April, forwarded from Dana with no comment in the body, just the subject line intact. "Richard Ivan's 35th anniversary retirement celebration. Cocktail attire. 200 guests. The Bridgeport Marriott, the same room where he'd once given a toast at Marcus's college graduation and not mentioned my name once, though I'd been sitting 11 feet away." At the bottom, under the RSVP line, someone, Linda, probably, her handwriting on the world always neat and merciless, had added a line by hand before it was scanned. "Richard would like Heather to attend." I read it 3 times. Not the way I read a client brief, moving fast, extracting what mattered. Slow. The way you read something you're afraid might disappear if you look away. Dana's name lit up on my phone a minute later. I picked up before the second ring. "You saw it," she said. "I saw it." "Are you sure you want to go?" The chandeliers in the ballroom at the Bridgeport Marriott threw a soft gold light over roses that were already wilting at the edges, and I smelled warm champagne before I even saw my name on the seating chart. I found it near the kitchen doors, table 14, wedged between the event's coordinator and 2 servers on their break. Linda had written it herself. I recognized the loops of her handwriting, the same hand that used to sign my school permission slips guardian instead of stepmother. I stood there for a moment, coat still on, and thought about turning around. Then I sat down at table 14 and ordered a water. Marcus found me 20 minutes later, drink in hand, tie loosened, the particular swagger of a man who'd had 2 glasses of wine and 1 promotion he didn't earn. "Wow," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Didn't think you'd actually show. Dad said you probably wouldn't. Here I am." "You look," he gestured at my dress, gray, plain, the kind of thing I wore to client meetings, professional, very consultant. Why? I didn't answer. A server refilled my water glass and I thanked her by name, Priya, according to her tag, because I'd learned a long time ago that the people at the edges of a room are usually the only honest ones in it. Marcus leaned in. "You know what this is, right? 200 people. Everyone who matters in Fairfield County business is in this room. And Dad put you by the kitchen." He smiled like he was doing me a favor by saying it out loud. "That's not an accident, Heather." "I know," I said. He looked disappointed that I hadn't flinched. He got up and went back to the family table, the one at the front, near the little stage with the microphone stand and the banner that read 35 years of excellence, Richard Ivan's. I ate almost nothing. I watched the room instead, men in navy suits comparing golf handicaps, Women admiring Linda's dress, a slideshow looping on a screen behind the stage, Richard cutting a ribbon at the Bridgeport warehouse, Richard shaking hands with a senator, Richard and Marcus at a groundbreaking hard hats and shovels. 41 trucks in that fleet now, 3 warehouses. On-time deliveries up 63% since Meridian took the account. I knew those numbers better than anyone in that ballroom because I was the reason for them. None of them knew that. It sat in my chest like a stone I carried and never showed anyone. At 9, the lights dimmed and Richard took the stage. He looked good up there. Silver at the temples, dark suit, the practiced ease of a man who had given this kind of speech 100 times in his head before he ever stood in front of a microphone. He thanked his board, his clients, the incredible team that never stopped believing in this company even when I did. He thanked Linda, the woman who rebuilt my life, and Marcus, the future of Ivan's distribution, and I mean that. Applause. Someone at a nearby table said, "To Marcus," and glasses clinked. Then Richard's eyes moved across the room and landed, for just a second, on me. "And I want to say something else tonight," he said, and the room quieted the way rooms do when they sense something is about to get interesting. People ask me the secret to 35 years in this business. I tell them, family. Everything I built to give my family a future. He paused, and I felt it coming before it landed, the way you feel a car brake too hard behind you. Not everyone takes that gift the same way, of course. A small laugh from the front tables, the kind that doesn't know yet what it's laughing at. Some of my kids built careers, built lives. And some, his eyes found me again, held there, well, let's just say not everyone in this family had the drive. The freeloader with no future. I love her anyway. The laugh that went through the room was worse than the words. It was polite.
It was practiced.
200 people who didn't know me decided, in that instant, exactly who I was. I stood up. Not fast. Not dramatic. I set my napkin on the table, picked up my water glass, and walked to the small service bar near the stage, where I asked the bartender, quietly, for a glass of champagne. Then I walked toward the microphone, and because a room full of drunk, comfortable people will always make space for a woman who looks like she has somewhere to be, they let me through. Richard's smile faltered when I reached for the mic stand. "I just want to say a few words," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "To my father, 35 years is a long time to build something. I know exactly how much work it takes to keep a company like this running. The systems, the people, the hands that never stop moving even when nobody's watching them do it." I raised my glass.
So,
to a career built on the hands you never once thanked. Silence. Someone near the front laughed, uncertain, and stopped. "This is the last time you'll see me," I said, to Richard, not to the room. "Congratulations, Dad." I set the glass down on the edge of the stage and walked out through the kitchen doors, past Priya, who caught my eye and said nothing, because some things don't need a response. By the time I reached my car, I could hear the murmur starting behind me, low and confused, 200 people asking each other what that meant. I didn't start the engine right away. I sat in the dark of the parking lot for a long moment, gripping the wheel, listening to my own breathing slow down. Then I pulled out onto the highway, heading north toward Boston, the Bridgeport lights shrinking in my mirror. Somewhere past the state line, at a red light, I reached over and opened my laptop on the passenger seat, the glow of the screen the only light in the car. I started typing a new email. The subject line read, "Notice of contract termination." I slept. That surprised me more than anything else that night. I thought I would lie awake replaying the microphone, the laughter, Marcus's face. Instead, I fell asleep on the couch in my work clothes and woke up at 5:52 with my neck stiff and the city still dark outside the window. I made coffee. I did not check my phone until the coffee was ready, and when I did, there were 14 missed calls. 2 from a number I didn't recognize with a Bridgeport area code. 11 from Marcus. 1 from Linda, at 4:17 a.m., no voicemail. I did not call anyone back. Instead, I opened my laptop at the kitchen counter, sat down, and read my own draft from the night before. In daylight, it looked different, not angrier, just cleaner. I fixed 2 typos. I deleted a sentence that sounded like I was trying to win an argument because I wasn't trying to win anything anymore. The first attachment was 3 pages, drafted by Meridian's counsel the year before as a standard exit clause, the kind we kept on file for every client relationship in case a conflict of interest ever surfaced. Termination effective immediately upon written notice, 30-day transition window, no cause required. I had never expected to use it on Ivan's distribution. I had built it for someone else's company. The second attachment was mine.
No lettered. Just my name. Dad.
I've been the person on the other end of Meridian's contract for 3 years. Every recommendation you praised in that boardroom, every quarter you called the turnaround, came from me. I didn't tell you because I wanted, once, to be measured by what I actually built. You gave me my answer at the party. I read it twice. Then I hit send at 6:04 a.m. and closed the laptop like it might still be listening. For a while, nothing happened. I made eggs. I watered the plant on the windowsill that Dana had given me for my birthday, the one I always forgot until it was nearly dead. I thought, distantly, about the trust fund paperwork still sitting in a drawer in my bedroom, my grandmother Margaret's $800,000, untouched since the lawyer's office 18 months ago, because I'd never let myself need it. I wondered, for the first time in a long time, what I might actually do with it now. My phone rang at 8:41. Turn on your email, she said, no hello. I already sent it.
I know. I'm not talking about that one.
I'm talking about the 11 that came back. Her voice had the flat, fast quality she got when something was actually on fire. Bridgeport warehouse called dispatch at 7:40 asking why the routing software locked them out. Nobody there has admin access. We've had that for 3 years, remember, because your father's IT department never wanted to manage it themselves. Then the second warehouse called. Then procurement, because the vendor portal runs through our scheduling layer. 41 trucks, Heather, and about 6 of them are just sitting in the yard right now because nobody down there knows how to release a manual override. I stood very still at the counter, one hand flat against the cool granite. And Richard? I asked. Richard has called this office 9 times personally. He wants a meeting. Today, if possible, he said today 3 separate times. He wants, and I'm quoting him now, 10 minutes with whoever the hell is really running this. A pause. He doesn't know it's you yet. He thinks I'm stalling him for scheduling reasons. Something in me expected to feel triumphant. I felt tired instead, and very awake, both at once.
No meeting, I said.
Heather. The contract terminated on receipt, per the clause. There's nothing to negotiate. If they want continuity support during the transition window, that's a separate conversation, and it goes through legal, not through a phone call from a warehouse floor. He's going to keep calling. Let him. Dana went quiet for a second. There's something else. Marcus just left a voicemail with our front desk. He said he's driving up. Today. From Connecticut? That's what he said. I looked at the clock. Depending on traffic on 95, that gave me somewhere between 2 and 3 hours. Okay, I said, and I was already reaching for my jacket. I'm coming in. By the time I got to Back Bay, the office was humming with the kind of controlled chaos I'd only ever seen from the outside. Phones ringing, 3 analysts huddled around a screen mapping which warehouse alerts were real emergencies and which were panic. Dana met me at the elevator. Keep my name off anything client-facing, I told her. For now. She nodded once, already moving toward the huddle, and I went into my office, closed the door, and started reading the incident log line by line because whatever came next, I wanted to know exactly what was breaking before anyone told me it was my fault. It was a little past 1 when I heard it, not the elevator chime, but a fist against the glass front doors, hard enough that the receptionist actually jumped. Sir, if you could just wait 1 moment, she started. I walked out before Dana could stop me. It was Marcus. Tie loosened, jacket wrinkled from the drive, breathing like he'd run the last block instead of parked in a garage. He looked past the front desk, past Dana's outstretched hand, straight at the closed door behind reception, the one with no name on it, the one he'd never once wondered about in 3 years. Where is he? Marcus said. To no one. To everyone. Whoever's running this. I need to talk to whoever's running this right now. And then the door opened, and it wasn't Dana standing there. It was me. I stepped back to let them into the lobby, not because they'd earned it, but because Meridian's floor had glass walls on 3 sides, and I wanted every account manager at every desk to see exactly who I was standing across from. Heather. Richard said my name like it was an accusation. He was still in yesterday's blazer, wrinkled at the elbows. You're going to fix this. Today. Fix what, specifically? You know what? Bridgeport's been sitting for 2 days. I've got a warehouse manager telling me 6 trucks can't pull inventory because your system locked him out.
My system, I said.
Correct. Linda came in behind him in sunglasses she didn't take off, though the lobby lights were soft and indirect. She found a spot near the reception desk and pressed a tissue under one lens without lifting it. Marcus trailed last, hands in his jacket pockets, rocking slightly on his heels, jaw working like he was chewing gum that wasn't there. Dana appeared at the edge of the floor, coffee in hand.
I gave her a small shake of my head.
Stay. Don't intervene. This needed witnesses. 20 employees, Richard said, voice climbing. 20 people are going to lose their jobs because of a temper tantrum. Is that what you want? To hurt people who never did anything to you? I terminated a contract. On the timeline the contract specifies. Section 11. 30-day notice waived by mutual breach, which you triggered publicly in front of 200 people Saturday night. That was a joke. It wasn't. I kept my voice at the volume you'd use to order coffee. I have it on video. For people already sent it to me unprompted.
His jaw tightened.
For a second the anger flickered into something raw, not quite fear, but adjacent to it, a man watching a floor tilt under him. Then it hardened back into command voice, the one he used in board meetings. You think I don't know what you're doing? This is spite. This is 32 years old and still punishing your father because mommy died and life wasn't fair. A woman near the second row of desks stopped typing. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. You told a room of your peers I had no future, I said. I'm the future you've been building on for 3 years. You called her a genius once. In a meeting. Track 12 if you want the timestamp, March, year 3. You said, and I quote, whoever's running point on this deserves a raise nobody's giving them. I have it. Dana has it. It's your voice. Richard went very still. Linda's tissue came down. Whatever performance she'd rehearsed on the drive up dissolved into something closer to real alarm. Heather, sweetheart, she started, and I almost laughed at sweetheart, a word she had not used with me since I was 14 and still occasionally useful for carrying grocery bags.
Don't, I said.
Marcus stepped forward instead, hands out of his pockets now, palms up, the posture of a man trying to look reasonable. Look, whatever's going on with you and Dad, that's between you two. But I've got 40 people under me who don't have a paycheck if this doesn't get sorted. That's not fair to them.
You're right, I said.
It's not fair to them. It also wasn't fair to me when I was 20 and pulled out of UConn, so you could have $42,000 a year for a degree I was told the family couldn't afford. Nobody in the lobby moved. Somewhere behind Dana, a phone rang twice and stopped. That is not what this is about, Richard said, but the volume had dropped. Something in him had started doing math. I could see it, the particular blankness of a man recalculating an argument that used to work and no longer does. Then tell me what this is about, I said. Because from where I'm standing, it's about a man who spent 30 years building a company on the backs of people he never thanked, and one of those people happens to share his last name. You want an apology?
Fine.
I'm sorry. He said it flat, fast like paying a toll. I'm sorry for whatever I said Saturday. Now call whoever you need to call and get my trucks moving. That's not an apology, I said. That's a request wearing one. You're not sorry for what you said. You're sorry it cost you access. His face changed color, a slow climb toward red I remembered from childhood dinners, right before the volume would come. But he caught it this time, glanced at the desks around us, the woman who'd stopped typing, a second man now openly watching over his monitor, and dropped his voice instead, which was somehow worse. You don't get to stand there and lecture me about family loyalty, he said. You walked away from this family. 19 years old, one duffel bag, out the door before I could even finish a sentence. I was 22, I said. 6:40 in the evening. I remember the time because I checked my watch on the porch, telling myself I still had time to change my mind. I didn't. And I didn't take myself out of anything. I was never let in. That's not. He stopped himself, recalibrated, jaw setting hard. You have no right to judge me. You left this family. Don't stand there and act like you have any standing to judge how I run it. I have a contract, a lawyer, and a recording, I said. That's not judgment. That's leverage. But go ahead, call it whatever helps you sleep. You don't have the right to judge me at all, he said, louder now, past caring who heard. You left. You don't get to come back after 10 years and decide you're the injured party. You walked out of this family, Heather. And behind me, close enough that I felt the air shift before I heard him, a voice I hadn't expected in that lobby on that morning said my name. Heather. I turned. It was Robert. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there in a gray raincoat still beaded with water from outside, holding a leather folder against his chest like it might keep him warm. Robert, Richard said, and his voice had a warning in it. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time. Robert set the folder on the reception counter. The clasp made a small metallic click in the quiet. I've waited 3 years to say this, and I'm not waiting anymore. I looked at him. Water dripped off his coat onto the marble floor. One drop, then another. Say what, Robert? I'm the one who sent Ivan's distribution to Meridian. The words landed strange, like a sentence in a language I almost knew. Dana, standing near the elevator bank, went very still. That's not possible, I said. Dana handled the intake. Nobody knew. Nobody knew it was you. I suspected. He looked at his hands. The first proposal you sent us, the one about pallet routing through Bridgeport, I read 6 pages of it and I thought I know this mind. I've watched this mind think since she was 9 years old, doing my taxes for fun at the kitchen table because she liked the way the numbers behaved. He almost smiled. I called the number on the letterhead myself. I told them we needed help. I never told your father why. I felt something shift under me, the way a chair shifts when you didn't realize it had 4 uneven legs. 3 years I had told myself the story simply. I built something, and it was strong enough that it found its own way back to the man who broke me.
Clean. Symmetric. Meaning.
It wasn't only mine. Why, I said, and I heard how flat my own voice had gone. Would you do that without telling me? Because if I told you, you'd have said no. Robert's eyes were wet now, though his voice held. You'd have said you didn't want anything that came from this family, and you'd have been right to say it. So I didn't ask permission. I just opened one door and stepped back. He shook his head. I told myself it was enough to open it quietly. I see now that quiet isn't the same as kind. Somewhere behind me, Marcus made a small disbelieving sound, like he'd been about to laugh and thought better of it. 12 years I said nothing. Robert went on, and now he was looking past me, at Richard. I sat in your board meetings, Richard. I signed the papers when you needed a second name on the loan. I told myself it wasn't my business, what you did to your daughter.
His jaw worked.
I'm done telling myself that. He picked the folder back up and pulled out a single sheet, the paper thin and slightly yellowed, the kind that had lived in a drawer a long time. He didn't hand it to Richard. He handed it to me. I unfolded it under the lobby lights. A bank statement, photocopied, the numbers still legible. Fairfield County Trust, an account opened in 1995 in the name of Susan Ivins, my mother, designated Heather M. Ivins Education Fund. Balance as of March 2013, $39,800. The month before I turned 20. The month before I was told there wasn't enough money for school. Your mother started that account the year you were born, Robert said quietly. She added to it every quarter. I know because I co-signed the transfer authorization the day it closed out, March 11th, 2013. Richard told me it was going toward outstanding medical bills from Susan's illness. He looked at Richard now, and there was nothing soft left in his face. It went to Hartwick. Tuition and housing, MBA program for semesters starting that August. The room did something strange. It didn't get loud, it got very quiet, the kind of quiet that has weight. Marcus's MBA, I said. Not a question. I already knew, and saying it out loud felt like setting down something I'd been carrying without noticing the weight of it for 12 years. Linda's hand went to her throat.
She didn't speak.
She didn't need to. Her face had already gone the color of the marble floor. Richard. My own voice surprised me, how level it stayed. Is that true? He didn't answer right away. He looked at the paper in my hand like it might change if he waited long enough. Then he said, quietly, almost to himself, there wasn't a clean way to explain it to a 20-year-old. There wasn't a clean way, I repeated. So you told me there wasn't enough money. You told me my mother would understand. You let me believe I'd been asked to sacrifice for the family. I folded the paper along its old crease, carefully, the way you'd handle something that had survived longer than it should have. You didn't ask me to sacrifice anything, Richard. You just took it. Marcus had gone quiet in a way I'd never once seen him go quiet. No charm left to perform with, nothing to deflect toward. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his mother, waiting for her to say it wasn't true, and she wasn't saying anything at all. I turned back to my father. 12 years of dinners where I sat one chair further from the center of the table. 12 years of birthdays that came and went unmarked while Marcus's were catered. 12 years of being told, in 100 small ways, that I had cost this family something, that I was the deficit in an otherwise balanced ledger. I thought of Bridgeport at 7:40 that morning, the badge reader flashing red under my hand, 41 trucks and 3 warehouses I had helped save from an 18% decline, and how none of it had bought me a single evening at that table where it mattered. I thought of the $2,000 folded in my coat pocket the night I walked out at 6:40, certain I owed this family nothing more. I had been wrong about that too, just in the opposite direction. They owed me, and had never once said so. 12 years you knew exactly what you took from me. So tell me, why did you still stand up in front of 200 people and call me a freeloader? Nobody in that lobby made a sound. No one moved. Then Robert's hand landed on my shoulder, light, and I let him steer me toward the elevator bank without another word to any of them. That was the last image I had of my father from that lobby, mouth open, no sound coming out, Linda's fingers digging into his sleeve like she could hold him upright by force. The elevator doors closed on his face before he found anything to say. 6 weeks later, Dana forwarded me a Hartford Courant business page screenshot with no caption, just the link. I read it standing in my kitchen with the kettle ticking behind me. Ivan's Distribution had lost 2 of its 3 largest accounts, Halloran Foods and a regional pharmacy distributor, and cut 20% of its warehouse staff. 40 people. I did the math without meaning to. 40 people who had nothing to do with any of this, holding boxes of their own belongings out through a loading dock I used to know the layout of better than my own apartment. I felt the number land somewhere behind my sternum. Not guilt. Something closer to recognition. The weight of watching a thing get dismantled by the hands that built it wrong in the first place. Marcus called that same week. I let it ring twice before answering, because Dana always said never let them hear you rush. Heather.
Hey.
Listen, I know it's weird right now. A pause, static, someone talking behind him. Dad's not doing great. Board's talking about an early transition. I just think if you could maybe put in a word with your people, get us a bridge contract, even a small one. There's no bridge contract, Marcus. I'm not asking for me. You're on the phone asking for me. That makes it for you. He hung up first. I set the phone on the counter and noticed my hand wasn't shaking. 3 years ago, it would have been. By October, the story had legs of its own in Connecticut business circles. Dana heard it secondhand from a logistics conference in Stamford. Then I heard it from Robert directly. The man who humiliated his own daughter at his retirement party had spent 3 years being propped up by a firm she secretly owned. Somebody at that party had talked. Somebody always talks. Richard stopped showing up to the Fairfield County Chamber breakfasts he used to chair. Linda texted me on a Tuesday. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I am so sorry for how you were treated in this family. I mean that. I read it twice, the way you check a receipt for an overcharge. Underneath the apology was a second message, sent 4 minutes later. Also, if there's any way to help with Richard's severance situation, even privately, it would mean everything. I didn't answer either one. Some apologies you can hold up to the light and see straight through, and hers had a shape I recognized, an apology built to reopen a door, not to close a wound. I saved both texts in a folder I'd started calling, without irony, evidence. Robert's message came the same week, no ask attached. No pressure to respond. Just wanted you to know I'm proud of how you handled all of it. Your mother would be too. I read that one 3 times. Then I put my phone face down on the table and didn't pick it back up for an hour. It was Robert, in the end, who mailed me the packet from Margaret's estate attorney. The one I'd let sit unopened in a drawer since the funeral, because grief has a way of making paperwork feel like betrayal. I finally opened it on a Sunday morning in November, coffee going cold beside me, the Back Bay apartment quiet except for the radiator ticking. Inside was the trust document I already knew about, $800,000 untouched, sitting in an account since Margaret died. And beneath it, a letter in her handwriting, the loops in her HS exactly the way I remembered them from birthday cards. Heather, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you finally let yourself open the drawer. I want you to know I saw all of it. The way they sat you at the far end of the table. The way your father let that boy's tuition matter more than the promise he made your mother. I couldn't stop it while I was alive, so I'm stopping it now, the only way I have left. This isn't an apology from your father. It's mine. Build something with it that's only yours. I cried then, not the controlled kind, not the kind I'd rationed out for 3 years like it was something that cost money. My shoulders shook over a coffee cup at 9 in the morning, alone, and it took a long time to stop, because it wasn't for him. It had never once been for him. When it passed, I wiped my face with the heel of my hand and looked at the letter again, and I already knew what I wanted to do with that money before I finished folding it back into the envelope. Not another lawsuit. Not another lesson aimed at Winthrop Lane. I picked my keys up off the counter, and I already knew the first place I needed to drive was a cemetery in Hartford I hadn't visited in years. The cemetery lot was empty except for a landscaping truck 2 rows over. I parked, took the small bundle of white peonies off the passenger seat, and walked the gravel path toward the Ivans plot without checking my phone once. Margaret Ivans, it said on the granite. 1946 to 2025. Beloved mother, grandmother. I brought peonies, I said. You liked the ones that hadn't opened all the way yet. You said the open ones already gave everything away. I set them against the base of the headstone and sat down on the grass beside it, the way I used to sit beside her hospital bed reading her the newspaper because her eyes tired too fast to read it herself. 3 weeks earlier I'd sat in a different room, across from a therapist named Priya, and said the sentence out loud for the first time. I don't think I ever grieved my mother. I think I just learned to survive without her. Priya hadn't nodded sympathetically or reached for a tissue box. She'd just asked, what would grieving have looked like if someone had let you? I hadn't had an answer that day. Sitting on Margaret's grave with the grass damp through my jeans, I thought maybe this was it. The trust is still sitting there, I told her. 800,000. I haven't touched it. I don't need it. Meridian's doing fine without it, better than fine, but I keep it because you meant it as proof, not as money. Proof someone was paying attention the whole time. My throat tightened once, briefly, and I let it. I pulled the letter out of my coat pocket, the one she'd left me, its creases gone soft from how many times I'd unfolded it. Don't wait for them to see you, she'd written. Build something they can't unsee. I read it there, out loud, the way I used to read to her, and for once the words weren't for her benefit. They were for mine. I told her about Dana. 2 weeks after Boston, I'd called Dana into my actual office, not the conference room she used for client calls, my office, the one with my name quietly listed on the lease and nowhere else, and told her the wall was coming down. I'm putting my name on the door, I said. Not because I want the attention, because I'm done being someone's secret. Dana had gone still for a second, then asked the only question that mattered to her. Does this change my title? I'd slid a folder across the desk. Chief Operating Officer, no longer outsourced. No longer a face rented for meetings I couldn't attend. She read it twice, the way I'd read Richard's speech invitation twice, and said, "You could have led with that instead of the ominous silence, you know." It was the first time we'd laughed together in months. Meridian had signed 2 new clients that quarter, a regional pharmaceutical distributor out of Providence and a furniture importer in Worcester. Neither of them because of the Ivans name, both of them because of a case study Dana had finally been allowed to publish with my name attached. Heather Ivans, founder. The Providence account alone was worth more than the final year of the Ivans contract had been. I hadn't needed revenge to be the engine. I'd needed my name back. I hadn't called Richard. I hadn't needed to hear how the company was doing, and by then everyone in Fairfield County had told me anyway, whether I asked or not. A warehouse manager's wife who used to work with Linda at a boutique, a former Ivans driver who'd landed at one of my new clients and recognized my name on an internal memo and gone quiet for a full week before finally saying, at a site visit, "I used to load trucks for a Richard Ivans." "Any relation?" I'd said, "My father," and left it there. He hadn't pushed, and I hadn't offered more. Some doors I didn't need to open all the way. Robert called every other Sunday now. Not to check on the business, not to relay family news I didn't ask for, just to talk. 2 Sundays ago, he'd told me he was finally selling his stake in Ivan's distribution outright. "There's nothing left there for either of us," he'd said, and I'd understood that was as close as he'd come to an apology for the years he'd stayed quiet, and I'd let it be enough, because unlike the rest of them, he'd never once asked me for anything in return. "Your mother would be proud of you," he added, quieter. "So would your grandmother." I hadn't trusted my voice to answer that, so I hadn't tried. "You'd like Priya," I told a headstone. "She doesn't let me get away with much either." I picked a blade of grass and turned it between my fingers. I used to think staying quiet was the same as being strong. It isn't. It just meant the people hurting me never had to face what they were doing. Silence protected them, Grandma. Not me. The wind moved through the peonies, and one of them, half open, dropped a single petal onto the granite. I stood, brushed the grass off my jeans, and looked at her name one more time before I turned back toward the car. If you've ever mistaken your own silence for peace, I hope this was the story that finally gave you permission to stop. Respect yourself loud enough that no one gets to mistake it for anything else.